It will always be a fact that you are a murderer.
It wouldn't surprise me if they have done this before. How can somebody do something so terrible? You know, it could have been avoided.
And it ultimately pierced the heart. The amount of force that was required to inflict that wound was not accidental.
Some relationships don't end with a breakup. They end with flashing police lights, grieving families, and years behind prison walls. One boyfriend was found dying after a goodbye kiss. Another was killed after a heated argument spiraled out of control. These weren't accidents or moments that could be taken back. They were choices that ended lives. Let's begin.
2, I would have never left his side. 3, I wouldn't have followed any of John's lies.
Inside a home shared by a loving couple, a goodbye kiss looked like an act of love. But moments later, a man was found dying from stab wounds, and the woman beside him claimed he had done it to himself. But as witnesses came forward, the story began to fall apart. On July 18, 2024, friends arrived at an apartment in Appleton, Wisconsin, after growing concerned about Joey Carnot. When they entered the home, they found him suffering from multiple stab wounds and immediately realized he was critically injured. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, but despite their efforts, Carnot did not survive his injuries. His girlfriend, 40-year-old Samantha Krebs, told investigators that Carnot had stabbed himself. However, witnesses later described a very different series of events. According to court records, before leaving the apartment, Krebs kissed Carnot goodbye and encouraged the others present to tell police that he had injured himself. Investigators became suspicious after comparing those statements with the physical evidence collected at the scene, leading them to question whether Carnot's injuries were truly self-inflicted. Their investigation ultimately pointed towards Krebs as the person responsible for his death. Police interviewed everyone at the scene and quickly noticed inconsistencies in Krebs' account. One witness told investigators they heard her say, "I can't go back to prison." As detectives gathered witness statements and examined the evidence, prosecutors concluded that Joey's death was not self-inflicted. Krebs was arrested and charged with first-degree intentional homicide.
Or 40s. Say she gets out when she's in her early 70s or her early 80s.
During the trial, prosecutors argued that Krebs tried to cover up the killing by convincing others to say Carnot had taken his own life. They also pointed to her lengthy criminal history, which included 37 convictions, and noted that she was on probation when the stabbing happened. Krebs continued to deny responsibility. She told the court she loved Joey and admitted she made tragic decisions while under the influence of substances and in shock, but insisted she did not cause his death. She said,
I couldn't wrap my head around the idea that anything would be so bad that anyone would take their own life.
Prosecutors argued that Krebs' actions after the stabbing showed an effort to avoid returning to prison rather than tell the truth. The defense maintained that she was not responsible for Carnot's death. During the testimony, investigators relied on forensic evidence and witness statements to challenge Krebs' version of events, telling jurors that she had tried to cover up the killing rather than seek immediate help. Krebs maintained that Carnot had stabbed himself, but after hearing several days of testimony and reviewing the evidence, the jury rejected her account. They found Samantha Krebs guilty of first-degree intentional homicide. At the sentencing hearing, the judge said the evidence showed an intentional killing and imposed Wisconsin's mandatory sentence of life in prison. He ruled that Krebs would be eligible to seek extended supervision after 36 years. In addition to the prison sentence, the judge ordered her to pay more than $8,000 in restitution to Joey Carnot's family to help cover case-related expenses. However, she remained emotionless through the verdict. Joey's family said the pain of losing him never fades. His mother told the court she still dreams about her son before waking up to the reality that he's gone. His sister remembered his kindness. She said,
He was always happy. Joey's laugh was contagious. You couldn't be around him and not laugh.
A goodbye kiss became the final act before a murder investigation. But our next story shows how a teenage romance ended with a promising football star never making it home.
The family wants me in prison, but I'm in my own prison for the rest of my life.
Inside a teenage romance, one deadly decision changed everything. A promising young football player never made it home, and the girl who once stood beside him now faced years behind bars. On December 20th, 2024, 17-year-old Yakim Chemo Lawler was fatally stabbed. His girlfriend, 17-year-old Jahara Malik, was arrested and charged in connection with his death. Although she was a teenager at the time, prosecutors decided to try her as an adult because of the seriousness of the case. Investigators gathered evidence from the scene and interviewed witnesses before charging Malik. As the case moved through court, both the prosecution and the defense agreed that Malik had stabbed Lawler. The main question before the judge was not guilt, but what punishment she should receive. The defense argued that because of Malik's young age, rehabilitation should be considered. Prosecutors, however, argued that the deadly stabbing deserved a significant prison sentence despite her age. During the trial, prosecutors argued that the evidence proved Jahara Malik was responsible for the fatal crime and asked the court to hold her accountable. After reviewing the evidence and hearing testimony, the court found Malik guilty.
Both J and L, and I'll address those respectively so that the record is clear.
During sentencing, emotions filled the courtroom as both families spoke directly to the judge. Malik admitted she thought about the pain she had caused every day. Her attorneys asked the judge to sentence her as a youthful offender, while prosecutors requested a much longer prison term. Judge Christine Hernandez sentenced Jahara Malik to 17 years in Florida State Prison, followed by 5 years of reporting probation. In addition to the prison term, the judge imposed an unusual condition. During her probation, Malik must write a letter every December 20th, reflecting on the crime, the harm it caused, and how it's affected her life. As the sentence was announced, Malik expressed remorse for her actions and told the court that she was sorry. She said,
"I can go back and change what happened, but I can't, and that's the worst part. I want to say I'm sorry to his friends and his family."
The judge acknowledged her statement, but emphasized the lasting impact of the crime on the victim's family before imposing the sentence. After the hearing, Lawler's family said they finally felt justice had been served. His mother said she hoped her son could now rest in peace. Meanwhile, Malik's relatives left the courtroom in tears, believing the sentence did not fully consider that she was only 17 years old when the crime occurred. One deadly argument ended in a courtroom, but our next story begins with a man who simply vanished, leading investigators chasing a mystery that stayed buried for months.
Did you confess to stabbing?
A man vanished without a trace, leaving his family desperate for answers. Then, nearly 7 months later, a shocking discovery in an Ohio river revealed a crime investigators say had been carefully hidden. In October 2024, 32-year-old George Cox Jr. suddenly vanished from Cleveland, Ohio, leaving his family confused and increasingly worried. After repeated attempts to contact him failed, his loved ones reported him missing on November 8th, fearing something terrible had happened. After reporting, investigators determined that George was last seen on October 18th, near the intersection of Bosworth Avenue and Peony Avenue. Despite search efforts and the missing persons investigation, there were no reliable sightings and no indication of where he had gone. For months, the case remained a mystery, while his family desperately searched for answers. As detectives searched for George, they conducted a welfare check at the apartment he shared with his girlfriend, 32-year-old Diamond Vaden. Inside, they found an almost empty apartment with very little furniture and a suspicious stain on the floor. Forensic testing later confirmed it belonged to George, while investigators also discovered that Vaden had already moved out. Months later, on May 15, 2025, a kayaker found a body in a shallow, marshy section of the Huron River. The victim had been wrapped in a fitted bedsheet and tied with marine-style rope. On July 2nd, the Erie County Sheriff's Office confirmed the body was George Cox Jr. Investigators say the evidence eventually pointed to Vaden. According to prosecutors, forensic evidence recovered from clothing at a residence linked the items to George. Authorities also alleged that the fitted bedsheet found wrapped around his remains matched bedding from the apartment the two once shared. Prosecutors further say that DNA evidence and cell phone records helped connect Vaden to the case. Authorities have not publicly revealed a motive. However, prosecutors believe the forensic evidence shows that George was killed and his body was later hidden in an attempt to cover up the crime. In court, she accepted her crime and said,
"He was beat up and he was stabbed."
Diamond Vaden chose to plead guilty before the case went to trial, admitting to involuntary manslaughter, felonious assault, and offenses against a human corpse in the death of George Cox Jr. Because of the guilty plea, there was no jury trial. In March 2026, a Cuyahoga County judge sentenced her to 19 years and 8 months to 25 years and 2 months in prison. bringing the months-long investigation to an end.
Your counsel, and we did review all of the language there. The court's obliged to do this at the time of sentencing per the case law. So I'm advising you again, the same things that...
However, she remained stone-faced while the verdict was read. For months, George's family hoped he would come home safely. Instead, they were left mourning a heartbreaking loss. What began as a missing persons case ended with a murder indictment, leaving a family searching not just for answers, but for justice. A missing persons case ended with a grim discovery in a river, but our next story proves a deadly confrontation doesn't always require a weapon alone.
A woman who pleaded guilty in the murder of her boyfriend is sentenced today. Wendy Thomas was charged with stabbing, beating, and suffocating Keno Butler with her body.
A man lay motionless on the living room floor, and the woman standing beside him admitted she had killed him. But as investigators uncovered what had happened inside that apartment, the truth became even more disturbing. In March 2016, 44-year-old Wendy Thomas and her 44-year-old boyfriend, Keno Butler, became involved in a violent confrontation inside their apartment in Erie, Pennsylvania. The argument escalated when Thomas stabbed Butler in the hand with a folding knife. She then struck him multiple times in the head with a broken table leg. As Butler lay injured on the floor, Thomas climbed on top of him and used the weight of her roughly 300-pound body to pin him down. According to reports, she said she remained on top of him for several minutes, preventing him from breathing or escaping. Police rushed to the apartment, and when they arrived, they found Butler's body lying on the living room floor. The scene was secured, and detectives began collecting evidence to determine what had happened. Investigators concluded that Butler, who weighed about 120 pounds, was unable to escape after Thomas pinned him beneath her body. An autopsy was later performed, and the medical examiner officially ruled Butler's death a homicide. According to the findings, he died from respiratory failure caused by blunt force injuries to his neck and chest. The examination also found significant head trauma, which further contributed to his death. The combination of these injuries ultimately proved fatal, leading investigators to classify the case. They continue their search for those responsible.
Court ordered Butler's family. She simply muttered, "I want to apologize to the family, and I'm very sorry."
As the investigation progressed, the evidence ultimately led to Thomas, who eventually admitted to her role in the killing. Authorities said the deadly attack happened during a household dispute inside the couple's apartment. What began as an argument quickly escalated into a deadly rampage. Rather than going to trial, Wendy Thomas pleaded guilty to third-degree murder. On December 21, 2017, a judge sentenced her to 18 to 36 years in prison for killing Keno Butler. Keno Butler's family said they're still struggling with his loss. His sister told the court they had hoped for a longer prison sentence, saying no punishment could ever replace the life that was taken. One boyfriend never walked out of his apartment alive, but our final story shows how a disturbing discovery in the trash sparked a confrontation that ended beneath the wheels of a car.
Prosecutors accusing a woman of running over and killing her boyfriend after she claimed to find another woman's tampons in the trash.
What started as an argument between a couple quickly turned into a deadly confrontation that neither family could ever take back. A moment of jealousy, a damaged car, and one life-changing decision ended with a man dead and his girlfriend facing years behind bars. In May 2024, 31-year-old Julie Bush, the mother of a 5-year-old daughter, and her 51-year-old boyfriend, Richard "Rick" Pinardo Jr., became involved in a heated argument outside a home near Oakley Boulevard and Eastern Avenue in Las Vegas. The couple had been arguing after Bush found something disturbing in the trash and confronted Pinardo about it. According to police, emotions escalated within minutes. Bush accused Pinardo of being unfaithful, but the argument soon moved outside the home. Investigators said Pinardo grabbed a long steel chain and began swinging it at Bush's vehicle, shattering several windows. Instead of driving away from the confrontation, Bush remained at the scene. Prosecutors said the situation became even more dangerous as both continued arguing. What had started as a personal disagreement was now turning into a life-or-death encounter. Authorities said Bush suddenly accelerated her vehicle toward Pinardo. The impact threw him into the air before he slammed into a nearby brick wall, leaving him critically injured. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police responded to the scene and quickly began gathering evidence. Detectives interviewed witnesses, examined the damaged vehicle, and reviewed surveillance footage from a nearby doorbell camera. According to prosecutors, the video clearly captured the entire incident. Investigators also discovered that Bush did not simply drive away after the first collision. Instead, They said she left the area, returned to the home 3 different times within just a few minutes, and struck Pinardo again before finally leaving. As detectives continued their investigation, they also looked into the argument that started everything. Prosecutors later told the court that the disturbing things Bush found belonged to Pinardo's roommate, not another romantic partner. What Bush believed was proof of cheating turned out to have a much different explanation. The doorbell camera footage became the most powerful evidence in the case. Facing the evidence against her, Bush later accepted responsibility through a plea agreement instead of taking the case to trial. In March 2025, she pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter and DUI resulting in death. Her public defender also told the judge that Bush was the mother of a 5-year-old daughter and pointed to body camera footage showing she appeared genuinely remorseful after the incident. Prosecutors said the deadly confrontation was triggered by jealousy and anger after Bush discovered something disturbing in the trash. Although she believed it proved Pinardo had been unfaithful, investigators later concluded it likely belonged to his roommate. The tragedy showed how quickly assumptions and emotions can spiral into irreversible carnage. As part of the plea agreement, Clark County District Court Judge Carly Kearney sentenced Julie Bush to 12 to 35 years in prison. Because she received credit for time already served, Bush will become eligible for parole in 2036. During her sentencing hearing, Bush became emotional as she addressed the court.
I'm sorry that he passed away, and I wish I could change it, but I can't.
Richard Pinardo Jr. lost his life during an argument that lasted only moments. Julie Bush lost her freedom, and her young daughter now faces growing up with her mother in prison. Pinardo's family said the relationship had become deeply troubled. His mother, Grace Fisher, told the court
his biggest mistake was ever getting involved with Julie Bush.
What began with suspicion and anger ended in heartbreak for everyone involved, serving as another reminder that a single decision made in the heat of the moment can change countless lives forever. These girlfriends once shared love, trust, and a future with the victims, but in each case, those relationships ended in brutality. In the end, every courtroom reached its own verdict, but for the families left behind and the sentences that continued to spark debate. And if you want even more content, join our membership for exclusive videos and early access to every upload. Your support helps us keep telling these stories. Just click the join button below. Thanks for watching.